What's up, guys? What's going on? This is Misfit. Welcome back to OverTakes. Today, we are going to be talking some more team previews. We got 3 more teams on the list today. We are going to be doing the New York Excelsior, the Paris Eternal, and the Philadelphia Fusion. We also got a little bit of news. The beta dropped on Tuesday. It is currently Thursday. And we also had the drop event that happened yesterday on stream where Overwatch, the channel on Twitch, went over 1 million viewers, which is phenomenal and crazy to think about if you really want to dive deep into it, how quote-unquote dead the game was when they released something exciting and new. And yeah, there were drops involved, but there's still a lot of people on there today. There's still over 100,000 people on there today. Tuesday, they set a record for when a beta dropped. There was like 400,000 people on Tuesday. So everything's looking good in Overwatch land. I got a beta key. I did the wait around for the streams. I watched a couple. I was reading up on some teams, getting some notes done so we can finish this off and get ready for the new season. And yeah, I was in. I played a little bit. We'll talk about that in a second. First, I want to thank everybody for joining me. Thanks, guys, for stopping by. If you've been around for 1 day or for 5 years since I started, thank you very much. And if you're new, just stopping by for the first time, I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week. This week is a lot more. Doing my team previews right now. We're in the middle of the alphabet. I'm going in alphabetical order, just right down the line. Want to look, there's a couple episodes that were back that I went over a few teams, and then I got a couple more coming out at the end of the week. And then next week we're going to start ramping up for the season. Let's talk before we dive into the 3 teams. We'll talk about, we'll call this our little news segment. You know, beta dropped. I had fun with it. I played last night. I was probably played about a good 4 or 5 hours of it. I was up late. I was excited. You guys are excited too. And my impressions were, it needs a little work. It does. Visually though, it was clearer. You could see things. There weren't 7,000 barriers. And the one main thing, it was fun to play. You had a chance and an opportunity to make plays. It's going to take a while for the community. I'm in lower ranks, guys. I'm not up too high. I also haven't played much in the last year, but it's going to be hard to get people into the flow of, at least from my perspective, to get people into the flow of, you don't have to stay in a ball. There's no shield. Go. That people don't understand, because I was playing a lot of tank because I wanted to check out Orisa. I'm terrible at Doomfist. I love the new Orisa. The Orisa, guys, when you get your hands on this beta, or if you already have it, try playing Orisa. It's way more fun than it was before. You feel indestructible. You can make plays. There's a skill shot scenario. The ultimate's good. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Fun thing that was playing Sojourn and playing just Soldier and playing of the other heroes where on DPS. Support was kind of a shit show, but when I started playing, there weren't 1,000 barriers. It was like Winston and Reinhardt. And Sim had some floaty barrier thing that no one played Sim then anyway, because it was just a trash pick. Except on certain maps, like Eichenwald First Point, you got a lot of people playing Sim because you had 7 turrets or 6 turrets or something like that, and you just scattered them all over the place. But that's neither here nor there. It's very fun to play Orisa, and it was fun playing all the other DPS. You just got to get used to positioning and doing different things on support, and it's going to take a bit. Just so you know, if you haven't got beta access yet, I know a lot of you guys, obviously you're here for the Overwatch League. First weekend of the year, they're going to have select events, 1,500 beta drops an hour. So you got to have your Battle.net account, and this happened a lot yesterday, where people were complaining that they didn't get their thing. Yeah, there were some glitches probably, but you got to link your Battle.net account to your YouTube account in this scenario. The last one was on Twitch. You have to link it to, you also, you get the drops. I think they got 2 times the Overwatch League coin drops. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on opening weekend too. It's going to be a blast. My impressions on the beta, yeah, things need some work. I think Bastion needs a little tone down, but the ultimate works a little too fast for me. I think at certain levels and ranks, you can't tune it down too much, because then you know how that whole balance thing is from the ladder and the pros and whatnot. But enough about that. Let's get into the meat of this conversation we're going to have today. Let's do some more team previews. Next 3 teams up, New York Excelsior, Paris Eternal, and Philadelphia Fusion. Let's dive into NYXL, or New York Excelsior, whatever they're calling themselves today. NYXL was formerly Andbox. I don't know what's going on with that. Whatever. The team with the math book cover for a logo. Let's go with that. The Excelsior. Let's talk about last year. Not too great. It was like a rebuilding year. Another one. And they kind of cleaned house in 2020, and they started again, and it was not that good. So they essentially got rid of everybody except for Flora. Flora's the only guy remaining on this team. They got rid of, Jonak they traded, kind of. They released / traded, but he retired after he joined Seoul. Bianca left, Yakpung left, Feather, Kalios, who's now on Washington, Guangboon, and Friday. All gone. Last year was not that good. They had one stage where they got to Hawaii somehow. I think everybody just failed in APAC. I think that was the stage where I believe Philly might have they lost one map to the Valiant, and that cost them the playoff spot. But anyway, last year, bad. This year, they're looking to rebound. They got a whole new look, and I think they look, just a quick look at it, they look better, for sure. So let's talk about what they've got. Let's talk about their DPS. They only are sporting 2 DPS on this team right now, Flora and Yaki, and, I'm okay with that. You might want another guy in to round things out, but it's going to be hard right now because getting visas and getting people in is going to take a bit. Like we talked about Exy last week, I heard somewhere that he probably won't be in until June be able to join the Mayhem. So he's going to be playing from Ping. So, you could sign somebody, have them laying in wait, so to speak, until you get them a visa to get them over here. But right now, they're just sticking with Flora and Yaki. And, that's a fantastic duo. I thought Flora was really good last year at points. He's going to be playing the hit scan and the Sombra. So that's going to be a good thing for them. He can play some Tracer, but it's mostly Cassidy, Widow, Ash, your classic hit scan guy. Did some decent stuff with them last year. They decided to keep him, so he must have done decently enough. And obviously, we know about Yaki. Yaki is a god. He is like S tier as far as, in my opinion, as far as a DPS. Especially when you get him on certain heroes. He was unbelievable on Tracer. His Genji is phenomenal. And even when they ran some of that Ash and like Echo combos that they were doing, some of the other stuff, that Tracer Ash that the Mayhem were doing last year, they in 2020, I should say, even a little bit last year when they ran some of it, that they looked really good. And he's just a god tier DPS that can carry. He carried that team to whatever wins they got last year. People say he had an off year. I'm a fan. I watched every match. I would say everybody else failed around him, and he did what he could. That's my take on Yaki from last year. But this is a good start, a good way to go into the season. 2 guys that could carry. You're going into this new game. I played some of you guys have played some. You see what it's all about. There's one less barrier. These guys can shoot and run around and do all kinds of stuff that I can't. I know for sure. Really, really important to have really good DPS, and I think this is a really good DPS line. Now, let's talk about the tanks. They just signed yesterday Vulcan, who is an American on this team. And this goes into the issue that we were talking about a minute ago with the visas and stuff like that. I don't think they wanted to try and get somebody else in until they loosen up some of the restrictions. There's some COVID issues going on over in Asia. Getting people over here and all that stuff is just not going to happen right now. But they needed a guy to play some of the off-tank stuff. And they got Vulcan. He played for Altyra, I don't know, whatever. He played on that team, and he played on Team Odyssey for a long time, for a couple years. So you have him off tank. I don't know much about this guy at all. I'm not going to try and pretend like I do. They needed someone to play off tank. They got what they could. As far as in North America, got him in. And, okay, so he's your off tank. Kellen is your main tank, and I have heard some good stuff about him. He's going to play, Winston Ryan, potentially Arissa Ball. I don't know which side. It's probably by committee who's better on Doomfist. Unless you're going to just run Yaki in there and have him play Doomfist. But you can't, actually. Never mind. I just thought about you only got 2 DPS players, so it's going to be either him or Vulcan. Yeah, Kellen, I think rookie solo tank, though, it's hard to say. I don't know who they're going to run more. You got to see how the meta fleshes out. Now, I hear a lot of talk of Ryan Rush with Moira Lucio and, May and that fun comp with, obviously without the Diva or whatever else they ran it with. Sometimes they ran it with Sigma. It depended on what it was run with. But you got one less person in that. But that seems to be what teams are going to go for. I think it's going to go one of two ways. That or some sort of dive with either Doom or Winston, potentially Ball. I don't think Ball's that. I didn't really see anyone play Ball at all. When I played, and I didn't have high-level games, though. I had a couple, though, that were late at night when the numbers of people started dwindling. I got into some matches where I was not fit to be in. And I was playing Orisa, and there were guys playing mostly either Rhine or Sigma, or sometimes they were playing Orisa. But yeah, I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see one of those two comps. But anyway, back to the NYXL. The tank line, I'm very unsure about. I think I've heard a lot of good things about Kellen, but I'm scared. Because I don't know about anything about this Vulcan guy. And I'm not saying it to demean him like that. I don't know anything about him. He could be really good and pop off. We've seen it before. So Kellen, rookie, has a track record of being decent. He was on Talon before that, and he did fairly well from things I've seen, read about him, seen other people talk about. So I think they might be okay with him in there, but I don't know anything. Like I said, don't know anything about Vulcan. Their support line is missing a main support. Now, this is another gap we were talking about when they were signing players, that they don't have a main support. I'm a little afraid of that. I was like, there's FD God's available if you wanted to just get a support, but he's in Europe right now, so it's the same thing getting someone from Europe in here. So you're in this whole scenario where unless there's an NA guy that you want to bring in right now, you might as well go with Gangnam Jin and Yangbang. One of those guys could play Moira. I don't know who would play Lucio if you're running that. So it's potentially, you could do some sort of dive comp, even if you did Zen Ana, or even if you did something weird like Moira Ana. I don't know why you would do that, but Moira, I just keep saying Moira because she has mobility and stuff like that, and people seem to be into her in this. And she's a good way to enable comps and stuff like that if you're running like a Deathball League rush kind of thing. But let's talk about who they are. I haven't even done that. You have Gangnam Jin, formerly of the Mayhem, and you have Yangbang, formerly of the Uprising. Both really, really high-level flex supports. They're great if you're running a double flex. Maybe you run BAP Ana, BAP, and somebody else. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I can't wait to see the start of this, because I have a feeling for some of these teams it's going to be, oh shit, we fucking didn't think about this, and I think they're in one of those boats because they went out and got an off-tank. Myeongbong, Gangnam Jin, very solid support line, very solid DPS line on this team with Flora and Yaki. No backups. No backups at all, really, except for you have two tanks. You have Kellen and Vulcan. Where do I see this team? Let's talk about that for a minute. I see them firmly planted in the middle. I don't think they're as good as those top four teams that you have with, like we've been talking about, Gladiators, Houston, Dallas, Atlanta. They're not in that class. A lot of people want them to be in that class. I kind of did at first. I was like, ooh, this roster's kind of sick. But now I'm looking at it, I'm going, there's not enough. There is not enough of a roster and appropriate players to make me have any confidence they're going to finish above, say, in NA, 6, 7. Overall, I'd say that they were 10 to 12. I would put them maybe a little bit higher. Depending on what happens, who knows? Like I said, Vulcan and Kellen could be the best tank rotation that you have in the league. I don't know. Doesn't seem that way to me right off the rip. But I think they're going to give some teams some trouble just because of Flora and Yaki, and you have Gangnam Jin and Yangbang. They're all solid. I feel like Yaki got stuck in the same situation he was in Florida. Their tank line is okay, so this is going to happen, right? I mean, Gargoyle might be better than Vulcan, and Kellen's better than whatever they had on main tank last year. be it Oj or Checkmate. So, yeah, I feel like they're right now middle of the pack. I don't think they're going to be great. I don't think they're going to be terrible either. There is a scenario if they get a main support and we're in a main support meta with a Lucio kind of situation that if they get someone that's decent enough that they can move up in the ranks. But I think they're kind of strapped by their hero pool right now, honestly, as far as supports and the unknown factors of 2 rookie tanks. I think that's a big factor in why I have them in the middle. Otherwise, I like the other 4 guys on the team. I think they're great. I think Flora can do the job. I mean, Yaki played with BQB. They're about on the same level. I'd say Flora and BQB. Maybe Flora's a tiny bit better. It's splitting hairs. But so we move on to the next team. We are going to talk about the Paris Eternal. Okay, Paris. They had a little bit of a roster switch up. Obviously, last year they went to a European roster full. And they got rid of some players. Let's talk about that first. Gone from the team this year. Onigod. Vestola left and came back. Suna, Elevote, and Neptuno, who really didn't see much action. He kind of left in the middle of the year. Okay, so last year was kind of mediocre. They did some stuff, but it was kind of apparent why they were in the situations they were in. They had a low strength of schedule. I think they had 8 wins. 4 of their wins were against London and London and Vancouver. So, and half your wins against the 2 worst teams in the league. They got exposed. So they went out and they kept a lot of their roster, which I didn't really hate it. I'm not going to lie. I liked a lot of their roster. They kept most of it. Now let's talk what they have. Let's talk about their DPS. They bring in Glister from San Francisco to do your hit scan duties. So obviously he got a bad rap last year. I think he played better than people wanted to give him credit for. He just wasn't striker is really what it amounted to. I think Glister is a really good player. I think he's gotten a bum rap from that, and I think he's primed for a good year with Paris. I think Paris low key is kind of a sneaky team that can beat you. Yeah, I like the addition of Glister, and that's really the only addition to their roster, but we're still going to talk about it. And they have Naga, who looked really good last year at times. He did some good stuff. I'm not going to lie. He was better than I expected. He looked decent on things like Pharah and, as Hanzo, Echo. He does all the projectile stuff. He's good. Is he at the caliber? Here's where it gets difficult. Is he at the caliber of some of the guys in the league? Can he hang with guys like Yaki? Or, your Sparkles, your Dohas, anyone that's on Dallas, because they all got 9 million heroes in their hero pool. Anybody that's on Washington, I don't know. I do think this team has some promise. They decided to stick with the team. They have synergy going into a new game, which is fantastic. You got decent DPS. Is it top of the line DPS? No. Is it bad? No, not either. Not that either. I think they're solid, above average. Let's talk about the tanks next. We have Don back again, main tank role, and we have Vestola, who joined the team last year and made them look a lot better in the middle of the year, honestly. He did a great job, and I'm glad they brought him back. I was a little puzzled as to why they let him go. Maybe they had to restructure his contract. Who knows? But he's going to play the off tanks, we know the hero pools now. D.Va, Sigma, probably, your Roadhogs and things like that when we get into those deep dives. Maybe he does the Doomfist. Tank line was underrated and solid last year, and I'm going with that kind of vibe this year. I think Don is better than people want to give him credit for. I think Vestola is really good too. I really like it. I think it's going to be a good, solid tank line. You might just need that solid, experienced player thing going into the new game. Next up, let's talk support. We have Khan and Doriedro both returning. Khan is probably one of the better Western/European supports doing the flex support duties. I think he's really good. I think he is unfortunately overshadowed by some of the really great guys, but I think he's really solid. he can do a lot for this team. Obviously, we talked about synergy. He knows how these guys play, and sometimes that familiarity helps out. I think he's going to be a good flex support for them, do what they need him to do. Dredro, same thing. I like him coming in. I think he has a good Lucio. Is it great? That's still to be determined, and he plays all the other stuff, Break, Mercy, whatever. He the main support role is going to play. He does that at a decent level. I think he helped out a lot. I really do. Him and Vistola came in that portion of the season. Granted, that might have been when they had a string of games against Vancouver and London, so maybe my vision is skewed to that a little bit. But yeah, I think they were great. As a duo, I think they did a fantastic job. I think they'll continue to do a fantastic job. Are they top of the league? No. This is one of those teams that's average to above average to me. I don't think anyone's a horrible pick to have on a team. I don't know if they can hang with the big boys, though. And that's where it gets, This is where we get into trouble with some of these teams. So where do I see them finishing? I put them in the same range as New York, honestly. There's a couple teams I have in this range. Maybe a slight bump lower, a little bit, but not really. I see them, NA, I could see them going anywhere from, like I said about New York. What did I say? I said like 6th to 10th. I could see maybe a bigger gap with Paris a little bit. Maybe drop them down 7 to 12. Maybe 12 is a little harsh. I don't think they're that bad in NA. There's a couple other teams that are worse. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be jumbled up in that middle there, trying to figure out what they are, and at least in the early part of the season. I do see them in that area of 7 to 12, let's go 7 to 11. I feel like they're not that bad, but they're not great. If they hit 11, 12, that's because the things didn't work out. Maybe Glister doesn't work out, something like that. They're also going straight 6. They don't have any backup plans or anything like that. See a few teams doing that. We saw that in the initial season where the Mayhem did that, and I think someone else did that too. But it just killed their team. Granted, they were playing 40 games in a stage, which was ridiculous. If you look back on that, there are 40 games in a season, 10 games per stage. That's ridiculous. They're not great, but I think guys like on this team, like Glister, are above average. Naga, above average. They have like average to above average players in every position. They're not going to set the world on fire by any means, but they're going to give some teams some trouble. Some of the Atlantis, the Dallases, the Gladiators, I think they're going to give them fights. I really do. Because there's pop-off potential in this game depending on what they play. If they go into mirror rush matches, I'm going to take the other team pretty much every time, just because, especially if you're getting against some of those teams like Atlanta, Dallas, some of those teams that are good at that stuff. But yeah, 7 to 12, or 7 to 11, I should say. I think I feel okay with that. They could move up in the standings if necessary. Well, if they play above their heads or other teams fail, because there's always teams that fail. Worse. More. Okay, that is team 2 in this one. Now let's talk last team for the episode. Let's talk Philly Fusion. Fusion are an interesting case just because they're still in APAC, and they're reworking pretty much their whole team here. Kind of again. They did have the unfortunate circumstance where Alarm passed away. I'm assuming let's talk about everybody that left other than Alarm, which was tragic, and it actually made me sad. And we talked about this when it happened. It just makes you feel awful. Let's talk about who they got rid of. They got rid of a lot of their identity over the last, maybe since the beginning. Some of them gone from the team. Hotba, EQO, Funny Astro, Poco, Rascal, Toby, Shockwave, and Mono retired. So last year was kind of a disappointment. I think they put a lot of stock into some of these guys they brought in. Rascal, Shockwave, Mono. I think they wanted to get back to where they were. And, on paper, it looked like they made some good moves. They brought in Hotba and Rascal earlier in the beginning of the season because they couldn't get EQO and Poco. I believe it was EQO and Poco and Shockwave over. So they needed some roster spots full. Or, I'm sorry, Funny Astro maybe. And then they brought Toby in for a little bit. Yeah, that's why there's so many guys on the team last year, too. But they had visa issues, and so there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. They didn't have their main roster that they were going to have playing. Disappointing year. Let's talk about what they got going on this year. Let's talk about their DPS line first. I think this is the best part of this team. All right, so DPS-wise, they kept Carpe. They brought in MN3 and Zest. I know MN3 is cracked because I saw a couple of highlight reels of this dude with T1, and he was absolutely bonkers. He also played on Element Mystic in the past, but he's going to be your hit scan guy and long range. Overlapping hero pool with Carpe, in fact. And then we also have Zest, also with T1. They just brought in their DPS line, which, is not a bad idea to do. Projectile does get the typical projectile, Genji, Pharah, Echo, Tracer. Maybe you have him run Tracer and Carpe run other stuff. I don't know how they're going to work that. Obviously, we know everything we need to know about Carpe. Hard hit scan, one of the best in the league. One of the legends of the league, I should say. A really, really good, solid guy in the last couple of years. He hasn't had the pop-off moments like he did early on, but still very, very solid. I think you're going to see a majority of MN3 and Zest, to me. Already have synergy, new game, get them out there. They know kind of how each other play, that whole scenario. Maybe Carpe comes in and does Widowmaker stuff or something like that. But I heard Zest has a pretty good Widowmaker too. Or I'm sorry, MN3. So I don't know how you want to work that. Unless you have Carpe as your Tracer guy. Carpe might not see as much playing time as he normally does. Which might not be bad for Philly. Just to give them a different identity. Get these kids out there and see what they can do. Which I think they're going to do a lot. Now, let's talk about their tank line. We have, coming over from Washington, we have Fury and Belisara from T1. He's going to be doing the main tank role. I don't know a lot about him. I honestly did not pay or see too much on him as far as people liking, not liking, that kind of thing. I did not see a ton on him. I'm assuming he's going to be good. He was on a decent team, finished third in Korean contenders. And he's also played with Zest and MN3. So why not put him in there? Obviously, we know about Fury. One of the best off-tanks in the league. We'll see how he does solo. We know it's hero pool. Diva Sigma. Can do Roadhog. Can do anything in the off-tank role. He's also one of the legends. Great player. I think their tank line, although I don't know much about Belisara, I haven't heard anyone speak his name. So I'm just going on on that. Anyway, I think the tank line is going to be good. Fury's obviously cracked, so he's still got some left in the tank. I think he was in a situation that was run by a bunch of idiots in Washington, to be honest. And his potential and his skill level and a bunch of the other guys on that team just were never met. I just think they were led in stupid directions and stuff like that, and we're not going to get into that on this episode. But I think you're looking pretty good. Now, here's where it gets difficult for the Fusion. Because you didn't expect Alarm to pass away. So they had to grab somebody, and they got Aim God. We haven't seen much of Aim God in 1,000 years. He's been playing on Team CC, and, he's above average. He looked really good at points in Season 1, a little bit in Season 2. But, I can't knock him for just grabbing him. He really the answer? I don't think so. I think he's going to be a good stopgap, a good fill spot guy. Decent Ana, decent Zenyatta, from what I remembered him playing. And then they have Fixa, who played on Uprising Academy in 2021, and played on T1 at a different point than these guys. He played on before. He played on Academy, Boston Academy. So he was there a little bit before MN3 and Zest as well. So I'm not high on this support line, but it's kind of makeshift. I really think if Alarm, they let Funny Astro go before that, but it'd been a lot easier to find a main support or have Fixa come in and with Alarm, and that would have been a decent backline. Obviously, Alarm was a god, but they did what they can, and this is what they got. Now in APAC, I think that them and Hangzhou are going to be fighting out for that last playoff spot pretty regularly. I would call them 4 to 6. At the 6 would be scary if they drop down to there. That would mean that Aim God and Fixa are not the answers to anything. they're on a bad path. But I do like what they have here as far as the team goes. I really believe that they can make some noise in APAC, challenge potentially your Seoul or fill in Chengdu if they're still viable, and fight with Hangzhou. Those are the 4 teams I really think they're going to be in the mix. Shanghai, obviously, they could give them fits. They have in the past. But I think there's enough good guys on this team where they can make some noise and do some things. I think this is a rebuild, but it's a smart rebuild. Obviously, like we said, they had their franchise guy in Alarm, and unfortunately, he passed away. There's nothing you can do about that. So they're going to have to do what they can and see if they can make it through. I do like their chances, though, to be decent. I think they can make that, 4 teams out of 7 make it to the regionals. I think they could be pretty ensconced in that. Maybe every once in a while, Guangzhou rears its ugly head, or Hangzhou fails, or something happens with Chengdu. But I think they're in that top 4 quite a bit. Like I said, anywhere 4 to 6. 6 is if this team totally falls apart. All right, so that is going to be my thoughts on the Fusion. And that's going to do it for this episode, guys. All right, so we talked NYXL, Paris Eternal, Philly Fusion today. And then in the next episode, we're going to be talking about the Shock, the Dynasty, and the Dragons. 3 interesting teams. And then we have one more episode after that. And we'll be into the season. Finally, after it feels like 1,000 years, we're going to be into the season. Thanks a lot for all your support. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you for stopping by if you're new and you made it to the end of the video. If you could do me a favor and hit the like button, hit a subscribe, any of the YouTube jazz, that would be great. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody stay safe, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you on the next one.